Yesterday my mortising machine ended up breaking, but it's only one part. The part's on order and will be here next week. But this weekend, it's currently a Tuesday, this weekend I have to have a farm table done and delivered. So I'm going to have to go about these mortises a different way. Some will be using the drill press with a forstener bit. And the reason for this video is just to show you that even when you have all the tools, something can happen, one can break, and you still need to get the job done. So it's always good to have at least 2 or 3 ways of completing any given technique with most any craft, not only woodworking. So let's go ahead and get started. The first step with cutting any joinery is doing the layout. And for cutting mortises, I use 2 tools for the most part, which are a marking gauge and then a square. And the first step is using the marking gauge. I set it up on the side with the double points for laying out mortises. You just decide on how far you want your mortise to be located, adjust that inner point in for this inner point in for how far you want it in from the face of the leg, and then this one to set up for the back side of the mortise. And then you just scribe that right across the wood, and that's going to give you 2 distinct marks. Then what you're going to do is you need to decide on where it's going to be located in this orientation vertically, and for that I use the square. I set up the square once for marking out the top of the mortise, then I loosen it, readjust it, and mark out the bottom of the mortise. And what that then gives you is a piece with your layout lines all on it. You can see the light scribe lines and then the pencil marks. I'll then take this part over to the drill press and get a fence set up. Alright, we're at the drill press. We need to get it set up, and forgive me if I stumble a little bit in this explanation. It's kind of a little tricky to explain for some reason. The first step is putting your drill press, your drill bit in, and then raising the table to where the drill bit is fairly close to your piece of wood. With your layout marks facing up, you can then clamp down a fence. I'm just using a 2x4 with some Irwin clamps clamped directly to the drill press table. You're going to adjust that 2x4 back and forth until you get the solid sides of your forstener bit lined up with those scribe marks. Then you're going to clamp that down. The next thing is doing some layout marks on the fence to where you know where to start and stop the mortise. So the first thing I do is set your leg back down, turn the bit 90 degrees to where now the solid parts of the forstener bit are facing left and right, and I line the bit up, the right side of the bit, with the inside of that pencil mark. Then I'm going to make a mark right against the leg on the fence. Then the next thing, you slide the leg down to the other pencil mark, and you make another mark on your fence. For the opposite mortise, you flip around to that, and you're going to need to have layout marks on that too. Then you're going to position the bit at that pencil mark, make a mark on the fence, shift it to the second pencil mark on your layout, and make another mark on your fence. Then you're going to have starting and stopping reference points. The advantage of this is that you can now just grab a leg that you've already made and just cut the mortises right in it without having to do the layout marks on it. So let's go ahead and get some holes drilled. The last thing to note I almost forgot was to set your depth on your drill press. You can see this stop here. So when I crank down on that wheel, the drill press will go all the way down until it hits that stop, and this adjusts the amount of travel in the drill press. How you adjust that is move your leg into place and then bring it down. That is where your hole is going to start. And then you can then adjust the distance between the stop and the adjustable part to the depth that you want to drill that hole. The toughest hole to drill in this process is going to be the first hole, because the chips don't have as much room to exit. Especially on these smaller forstener bits, they have a tendency to kind of clog up a little bit. But when you drill the consecutive holes afterwards, there is room for those chips to exit into the previous hole. And once you get done with one mortise, you just flip the leg around to the corresponding spot and lines on the fence and drill those holes. And here's what you get afterwards, just a bunch of holes in a line. You want to make sure that you keep really sharp chisels. That makes this job a lot easier. I'm using a diamond stone and then a sharpening guide. I like these type right here that are inexpensive and easy to use. And then follow it up by honing on the back of the blade to make sure you remove any pitting, and that keeps an optimal sharpness. there's the two chisels. It's an 1.5 inch and a 3/4 inch chisel. Most of the time I'm just using body weight to pair out these mortises, but on occasion you do need to use a mallet, especially when you square out the corners. You just want to go ahead and just mallet those out. With that mortise cut, I was able to go ahead and finish all the rest. That's a total of 8 mortises, and that took about 45 minutes to an hour to drill them all out and then chisel them out by hand. If I had my mortising machine, it'd probably take about 15 minutes. So it's much faster, but it's not too bad to do things in a different way on occasion. These legs are made out of eastern red cedar. It's a common wood that grows around here. It grows in a lot of places across the country. I think to about the Midwest and up to about 3/4 up the country from the south. It's the stuff that they make animal bedding out of, so like hamster cage chips and cedar chests, and keeps moths away. And it's used for a lot of fence posts because it's a naturally rot resistant wood, and that's the purpose I used it. This particular table is going to be an outdoor farm table, so it needs to hold up to the elements, and I didn't want to turn a treated post and get that treatment chemical all over me. So I turned it out of this, and then I am going to dip the bottom of the leg and the top of the leg, the end grain, in a wood preservative to add a little extra protection. And the finish for the base is going to be an Olympic solid stain, and it's going to be black and then sort of distressed some. That is what they ordered, and that's what they're going to get. And so I'm pretty excited to see this table. It's going to be 11 feet long, 42 inches wide, so this is quite a big table. As far as the tenon goes, the apron is a 2x6 that has been planed down to a little over 1 1/4 inches, and then see if we can't get this fit in here. Let you see that. I cut these tenons on my sliding miter saw. It's the first time I've done it, but the longer aprons were 122 inches, so that is a bit much to handle cutting them the way I normally cut them on my table saw. You can see a video of how I normally do it if you'd like to see that. It's table saw tenon cutting jig or something like that on my channel. But I cut them on my miter saw using there's a depth stop on there. I didn't even know it existed till not too long ago. I was fooling with my saw, getting it adjusted, and saw it and kind of just figured that out. You flip the thing down and there's a little thumb screw with a wing nut on it. You can adjust that to set the depth stop on a miter saw to basically cut dados, just not cut all the way through your board. And so I used that to cut the tenon, and then where I needed to cut off the waste on the top and bottom, just used a little Japanese style saw and whipped those off. And that turned out to be a good way to cut tenons on the ends of really long boards. Otherwise I would normally use a router and this little simple jig that I've kind of set up, but the miter saw, it was actually easier with that rigid flip top thing I just recently got out to the side supporting the board. So I guess that pretty much covers it. Just wanted to give you a little bit extra about the joint itself and what I'm making. So with all that said, I guess I want to thank you for watching. See you next time.
Click it. Click it. Click it.